Joining us now from the Canadian Embassy in Washington is President and CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Candace Laing. Candace Laing, it's good to see you. Thank you for being here on Inauguration Day.
Thank you for having me.
Everybody, or not every, a lot of people were expecting to see tariffs today. We're not seeing them. What is your reaction to the lack of direct action by the Trump administration today?
Well, first off, any day without tariffs is a good day. That means $3.6 billion of business continues to happen between our two great nations in the economic union that we have. But no tariffs today does not mean no tariffs tomorrow. So we're turning our attention to the review and doing what we can to make sure the facts of our great economic union are considered in that review and not felt as an outcome of that review by both Americans and Canadians.
Do you have any sense of how this review will operate? I mean, I presume there are rules about these sorts of reviews that exist in trade agreements and trade law, but rules don't always apply in a Trump administration. So do you have any clarity on how this is going to happen and whether you can participate in a meaningful way?
Yeah, no clarity yet at this point. I think we're all eager to learn about those details. I think what we do know is Trump looks at international relations differently. Trump looks at, trade deficits in his own way, and so we'll be keen to bring data to that discussion and inputs into that. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce, you probably have seen, we've put out recently our Canada-U.S. trade tracker, free for everybody to use, so we can actually better educate all those that are in every tangent to that conversation and in that conversation themselves, so we can actually look at and better understand at all levels, national, subnational, just how big how big the economic force we are together.
Do you think it's about convincing, though, the president with data and with rational arguments and with charts, or is it about finding a way to allow him to claim victory without really damaging the Canadian economy?
Well, I think the approach, we know Trump likes to go win-lose, and I think we can be pretty clear with the facts in this case that tariffs mean a lose-lose scenario for Americans. We heard a lot today about keeping costs low, the affordability conversation. And it'll only be a matter of time if we can't, factor in this early in the discussions that it's felt by Americans. And so our hope is that we don't take the long way into that outcome, but we actually reach a good outcome by, better understanding early on just how great an economic union we have. We should not take that for granted on either side of the border. And in any case, we do not need economic force to be the great economic force that we already are.
Dominic LeBlanc said earlier today in reacting to the lack of tariff action at the cabinet retreat in Montebello that reprieve is too strong a word to describe this, right? Because there is still a lack of clarity and this cloud of uncertainty. And I see you nodding, so I presume you agree. But yeah. What can you use this time to do? Because surely all of the data and all of the trade numbers and all of the economic fallout has been shared widely with U.S. officials to this point, and I presume most of them that you speak with already know this, because most people in business and in politics are rational actors on some things. So what do you use this time to do? Like, what's the argument you can make now that could turn this into a permanent, actually turn it into a reprieve from the threat?
Well, I think you're quite right, and I would agree. I don't use reprieve for today. I don't use the word relief. I do use we have a bit of room to breathe and take another run at those discussions. And I think that's what we do. We leverage the bit of space and time we have to double down on our discussions and those efforts to have those conversations. And that's what the business community and the business association, the relationships we have, they are strong, they are durable ties. We will double down on those, which actually are very strong no matter what the scenario or transitions might be in politics.
It's interesting to see that all of these conversations continue to happen. There is some indication that Scott Bessent, who is Trump's nominee for Treasury Secretary, he hinted that maybe the full policy is still being worked out. So do you have any sense of whether or not this is the pause they need to dot their I's and cross their T's,
Yes.
and this could still be coming.
I would hope so, and I think, I'm not an expert, but I think it's fair to say we learned a bit about this. We have quite a bit of game tape from Trump 1.0 to review, and I think things can change. You think you have a position or you think you have something worked out, but half an hour before something is announced, it could end up looking different. So I think that's part of what's really important as we plan in the space and time we have to breathe now, that we always do keep that in mind.
I keep looking for meaning and clarity in the actions and lack of actions of President Trump, and I should have learned my lesson from the first time that is a very difficult thing, if not impossible thing to do. But he didn't do the tariffs today, and he did sign other executive orders and send clear messages that the number one job is to reduce costs for people inside the United States, to drive down the price of groceries, to drive down the price of gas, to make life more affordable. Tariffs obviously work counter to that. Do you draw any hope from that is priority, setting the immigration issues aside, because that is a whole other thing that could be quite disruptive, but at least when it comes to dollars and cents in the economic side, his focus is on reducing costs and not hitting its biggest trading partner with tariffs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's maybe a window or a toehold that we can pick up on, and we do know that the tariffs, a 25% tariff scenario means when Americans are filling up at the fuel pumps or at the grocery checkout line, in terms of their real household income, this has an impact. I think of well over $1,000, maybe $1,900 per household. So that's significant. I think what gives me hope is we either settle this the long way or the short way. We're hoping for the short way.
So, meanwhile, President Trump has gotten a lot of action on the border, on both borders. Mexico has reoriented some of his trade practices and taken action on the U.S. southern border, and Canada has done similar things here, though the China issue is less of a pressing one for us. He may just keep doing this, right? Because even before he took office, he got action from his two biggest neighbors and economic allies, and creates uncertainty that presumably you would be worried could affect investment in Canada, investment in Mexico, and cause disruption on that side of the economic ledger.
Yeah, I mean, it's an unfortunate scenario, and uncertainty can be weaponized, but in Canada we deal with a lot of uncertainty, unfortunately, in business. And, I think what is very difficult and even frustrating for the business community and all of us is it's very hard to sift and sort through when we hear Trump say things, what are tactics versus what's part of an actual, more broad strategic agenda. And so the discipline that we take is, we take everything seriously, maybe not everything literally, but everything seriously to help navigate through that challenge, because that is part of the terrain here. It's incredibly difficult to know what means what, and sifting and sorting through, what is tactics versus what is, a strategic and broader agenda.
Do you think, just as a final question, do you think the end goal was just to get change on the border? Or do you think there's a broader realignment of trade and renegotiation of trade policies in a shorter term than the NAFTA review that seems to be the end goal here?
Yeah, I think I was quite clear, when the news of the 25% tariffs and the border demands came out on November 25th, that I cautioned we can do everything we can in terms of the border issue and be in the same place in terms of our position when it comes to our trade relationships. So I cautioned early on that, and I think that's important going forward. And, I think at the end of the day, this is an important moment for Canada. We can pause, reflect on our trade, the trading nation that we are, and strengthen ourselves on all fronts with the United States, in other markets, and even inside our own borders.
CEO of the Canadian Chamber of Commerce, Candace Laing, we appreciate your time today. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.